Welcome back to the deep dive. Um, we are doing something a little bit different today. Usually we're looking at a specific strategy, like how to optimize your calendar or negotiate a salary or maybe understand some specific piece of geopolitical news.
Right, something highly tactical.
Exactly. But today we are looking at a blueprint for, well, I guess for being, for existence. And I hesitate to use that phrase because it sounds incredibly vague and almost um, new agey, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like a retreat in Sedona or something.
Totally. But the source material we are covering today is anything but soft. We are looking at the root square chart from a manuscript called The Architect of Life, which is part of this much broader framework called metamatics.
And it's definitely not soft. I mean, when you actually look at the source documents, the visuals look way more like engineering schematics than any sort of traditional self-help material.
That was literally the first thing that struck me.
Yeah.
I opened the file expecting, I don't know, glossy PDF with a really nice serif font and maybe a stock photo of a guy climbing a mountain.
A very minimalist sunset in the background.
Yes, exactly. But instead, we have these scans of hand-drawn charts on graph paper. And they're messy. There are scribbles everywhere. There are jagged lines connecting all these little boxes. It honestly looks like a circuit board. Or maybe the frantic notes of a mad scientist trying to map out a genome.
But that visual is actually the perfect entry point for you to understand this. The messiness of those scans isn't an accident. It's essentially a feature of the system. Most productivity tools are incredibly sterile.
Right, they assume life is just a clean grid.
Exactly. They assume a linear progression. But the root square chart assumes that your life is a chaotic, organic system that needs to be engineered from the ground up. It's not about aesthetics at all. It's entirely about function.
Okay, but before we get into the boxes and the lines and all the organic chaos, we really need to address the elephant in the room, which is this term, metamatics.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
It sounds like a buzzword, invented to sell a very expensive weekend seminar. Is this just a fancy way of saying thinking about thinking, or is there an actual rigorous system here?
No, there's an actual system. It's a highly specific discipline within the manuscript. So think of it this way. Mathematics is the study of relationships between quantities, right?
Like numbers, vectors, geometric shapes, things you can measure.
Exactly. Metamatics is proposed as the study of relationships between qualities. It treats abstract concepts like discipline or creativity or integrity as if they were chemical elements.
Oh, like they have atomic weights and bonding rules and stuff.
Precisely. It asks questions like, if I combine element A, which is patience, with element B, which is technical skill, what is the inevitable chemical reaction that occurs? It's basically an attempt to bring the strict rigor of physics to the absolute ambiguity of personal growth.
So it's like the calculus of character.
That's actually a really good way to put it. It's operating on the assumption that who you are isn't just a vibe, but an actual structure. And if it's a structure, it can be built, it can be architected.
Architecture, not aspiration. That's kind of the tagline of the text. But let's challenge that for a second, because everyone listening right now has probably made a vision board at some point in their life.
Or at least a New Year's resolution list on their phone.
Right. I'm going to lose weight. I want to be a VP. I want to write a novel. How is the root square chart functionally any different from just writing down what you want and staring at it every day?
The difference is entirely about the direction of construction. A vision board focuses on the root, the final outcome. You stick a picture of the Ferrari or the corner office on the wall.
Yeah, you're essentially staring at the roof of the house you haven't built yet.
Exactly. It feels good, right? It gives you a little dopamine hit. But it provides absolutely zero structural integrity. The root square chart argues that you cannot simply choose to be different. You can't just decide, today I'm going to be a CEO or a professional athlete.
Because the identity doesn't exist yet.
Right. You have to engineer a highly specific structure where that new identity is the inevitable emergent result.
Emergent result. That's a massive key phrase in the text.
It is the whole ballgame. Emergence is when a property appears in a complex system that simply didn't exist in the individual parts.
Like wetness, right. The manuscript uses that analogy.
Yes. The water analogy is perfect. Wetness is not a property of a hydrogen atom, and it's not a property of an oxygen atom. But if you combine them in the right structure, wetness emerges. It's a brand new property.
So the root square chart is designed to take the raw materials of your daily life.
Your time, your attention, your very specific daily actions.
Right, and arrange them so that a new version of you emerges naturally rather than you just trying to force it into existence through sheer willpower.
Exactly. Willpower is finite. Structure is what scales.
That sounds incredible in theory, but it also sounds really complicated because we're so used to linear thinking. The whole ladder approach to success. Step 1, step 2, step 3, boom, goal. Why is the ladder wrong?
Well, the latter isn't technically wrong. It's just entirely insufficient for real transformation. The latter works perfectly for accumulation.
Like saving money.
Exactly. If you want to save $1 million, that's a ladder. A dollar plus a dollar plus a dollar. But if you want to actually become a wealthy person,
Which is totally different.
very different. It involves a massive shift in your psychology, your risk tolerance, the people you associate with. That is not linear. That is a multidimensional synthesis. You don't climb a ladder to get a new personality. You have to assemble an entire ecosystem that supports it.
So our mission today, for everyone listening, is to decode this ecosystem.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of ground to cover. I mean, we're going to break down the anatomy of the chart, the fruits, the leaves, the branches, and the root.
The whole botanical structure.
Yeah, and then we need to look at the math.
Yeah.
Specifically this synthesis operator and the fourth quarter principle, which I will be honest, I found to be the most biting personal critique of my own life.
Oh, the fourth quarter is where almost all high performers completely fail. It's the missing link for so many smart people.
I felt very seen and very attacked by that section. We'll get there. And later we're going to actually build a chart from scratch for a hypothetical career pivot so you can see how this works in practice. But let's start with the anatomy, the core inversion rule. The manuscript says most people build from the center out, and that's why they fail.
Right, they start with the ego.
Yeah, so the root score chart demands you start at the edge.
Correct. So I want you to imagine the chart as a hierarchy of nested squares. In the dead center, you have the root. Surrounding that root are 4 large squares called branches.
Okay, tracking so far.
Now, growing out of those branches are smaller squares called leaves. And at the very outer edge, the literal skin of the chart, you have the smallest units, which are the fruits.
So it's root, branches, leaves, fruits, center to edge.
Visually, yes. But the core inversion rule is absolute in its application. The root does not exist until the branches do. The branches do not exist until the leaves do. And the leaves do not exist until the fruits do.
So you literally cannot build the center first. It's physically impossible in this mathematical model.
It's an empty void. If you write down, I am a calm, centered leader in the root box, but you have no fruits out on the edges supporting it, it's a hallucination. It's just ink on paper. You have to start at the periphery.
Let's talk about that periphery then. Level 4, the fruits. The text says there are 36 fruits in a fully built chart.
Yes, 36.
My immediate reaction, and I suspect your reaction listening right now, is just, whoa, 36 things. I can barely remember to take my daily vitamins. That sounds like an absolute recipe for severe burnout.
It sounds totally overwhelming if you view them as traditional tasks on a to-do list. But a fruit is not a project. The text defines it as the atomic unit of transformation. Mathematically, it represents about 2.78% of the chart's total value.
Okay, so it's tiny.
Very tiny. And to even qualify as a fruit, an action must meet 3 incredibly strict criteria. It must be irreducible, actionable, and observable.
Let's test this because I think examples help. If my goal is get in shape, is that a fruit?
Not even close to a fruit. That is a vague outcome. That might be a branch, if you're lucky.
Okay, let me zoom in. Go to the gym.
Closer, but it's still way too big. Go to the gym implies a whole complex sequence of events. You have to find your shoes, you have to drive there, you have to choose a workout program. It creates massive friction.
So it's not irreducible.
Right, you can still break it down.
Okay, so what is the actual fruit for fitness?
Put on running shoes immediately upon waking.
That's it. That's the whole thing.
That is the atom. Think about the criteria. Is it irreducible? Yes, you really can't break putting on shoes down any further without getting absurd.
Right, you're not going to write tie the left shoelace.
Exactly. Is it actionable? Yes, you can do it tomorrow morning. Is it observable? Yes, it's purely binary. You either have the shoes on your feet or you don't. There is absolutely no gray area for your ego to hide in.
This distinction feels really important because we so often judge ourselves on the root. Like, am I fit? Or am I successful? Rather than judging ourselves on the fruit, which is, did I put my shoes on?
Right, and the source material makes a fascinating philosophical point right here. It says you cannot practice a root.
You can't practice an outcome.
Right, you cannot practice being a CEO. You cannot practice being a good father. Those concepts are way too big and abstract. You can only eat the fruit.
Eat the fruit. I love that phrasing.
You can practice listening without interrupting for 3 minutes. You can practice checking the balance sheet at 9 a.m. sharp. The fruit is literally the only place in the entire metamatics framework where human agency actually exists. Everything else is just a consequence of the fruit.
Okay, well, the fruit is the only place agency exists. So the 36 fruits aren't 36 giant, exhausting projects. They are 36 micro-habits that act as the underlying code for the software of your new life.
Precisely. And just to ease the anxiety, you don't do all 36 every single day. We'll definitely get to the daily protocol later. But they are the menu of fundamental options available to you.
Okay, so we have these atoms, the fruits. But a pile of atoms isn't an organism, right?
Yeah.
A pile of atoms is just a pile. We need structure, which moves us inward to level 3, the leaves. There are 12 leaves in the chart. So how do these tiny fruits become a leaf?
This is where metamatics starts to get really interesting. A leaf is defined as a functional state of being or a specific capability. A leaf is not something you actively do. It is a state that happens to you when you consistently combine 3 specific fruits.
3 fruits to 1 leaf. Give me a concrete example of this. The text mentions deep focus as a leaf.
Right. So everyone wants deep focus. We treat it like a light switch. We should just be able to flip on command. We get mad at ourselves and say, why can't I focus?
I do that all the time.
But in this framework, focus is a leaf. It is a biological and environmental state that requires ingredients to manifest. You can't just forcefully do focus, but you can do the fruits.
Okay, so what are the specific fruits for focus?
Fruit 1 might be phone placed in a different room. That's your environment modifier.
Irreducible, actionable, observable. Check.
Fruit 2 is noise-canceling headphones placed on your head. That's your sensory gating.
Check.
Fruit 3 is setting a physical timer for 45 minutes. That's your temporal container.
So I do those 3 things.
If you execute those 3 atomic actions, the actual state of deep focus emerges on its own. You don't have to strain or try to focus anymore. The structure you built has created the absolute conditions for that state to exist.
I really like that because it completely takes the moral judgment out of the equation. It shifts the narrative from I'm lazy and I have a terrible attention span to I simply haven't assembled the correct components of the focus leaf yet.
Exactly. It turns a deep character flaw into a basic engineering problem. If the leaf isn't growing, you don't cry about it, you just check the fruits. Which atom is missing from the formula?
Okay, moving 1 layer inward. Level 2, the branches. There are 4 of these big squares. These seem to be the major load-bearing pillars of your life.
Yes, the branches are integrated capabilities. So while leaves are specific transient states like focus or rest or articulation, branches are the broad, enduring themes that hold your actual identity together.
The text suggests 4 archetypal branches for a professional context, right? Competence, connectivity, character, and contribution.
Those are the standard for, yes, competence is basically what you can do. Your hard skills.
Connectivity is who you know and who trusts you.
Character is who you are when no one is watching. Your integrity.
And contribution is what you give back, or
Yeah.
their legacy.
Right. But the key insight in metamatics is that these 4 branches are equivocal perspectives.
Equivocal perspectives. What does that mean in plain English?
It means they are just 4 different dimensional lenses looking at the exact same object, which is you. You can't just have a giant competence branch where you are the absolute best software coder in the world, but you have a completely withered connectivity branch where you're a hermit who talks to literally no one.
Because eventually the technical skill doesn't matter if nobody knows you exist.
Exactly. The competence effectively dies because it has no outlet to interface with reality. The branches have to structurally support and balance each other. They share the weight.
And finally, we reach the dead center. Level 1. The root.
The emergent whole. The final integrated outcome. And remember, the core rule here, the root is an empty box until the rest of the chart is built.
Right, we established that. But there's a really great analogy the manuscript uses here about fire.
Oh, the fire analogy is brilliant. It points out that you cannot actually build a fire.
Which sounds wrong at first, but it makes sense.
It does. You can pile the heavy wood, which is your branch. You can arrange the dry kindling, which is your leaf. You can strike the flint to create a spark, which is your fruit. But the fire itself, the fire is the chemical reaction. It emerges entirely on its own. You are just the tender of the conditions. You are not the creator of the result.
That is honestly a huge relief. It means I can stop obsessing over the macro question of, am I a success? And just focus entirely on the micro question of, am I piling this wood correctly today?
It totally shifts your focus from chasing status to executing process. And process is controllable.
Now I want to shift gears and really get into the math part of mathematics. Because as we said earlier, this chart isn't just a pretty drawing, it's a mathematical formula. The text uses this very specific symbol. It's a plus sign inside of a circle.
Yes, the synthesis operator.
The synthesis operator. Let's break this down because I think this is crucial for understanding why we fail despite working so hard. Most of us operate on standard addition logic, just a regular plus sign.
Right, we think 1 + 1 = 2. It's highly linear. If I work 1 hour, I get 1 unit of result. If I work 2 hours, I expect 2 units of result.
It implies that more is always automatically better. If I want to be twice as successful, I just need to grind twice as hard. I need to add more hours to my week.
That's the brute force method, and it leads straight to burnout. But the synthesis operator, the plus inside the circle, works fundamentally differently. It's closer to chemistry like we discussed. Hydrogen synthesized with oxygen equals water.
Which is a qualitative shift, not a quantitative one.
Exactly. Water is not just more gas, it's a liquid. It has entirely new properties that can actually put out a fire, whereas oxygen fuels a fire. The properties have fundamentally flipped through synthesis.
So the actual formula written in the chart is fruit 1 synthesized with fruit, 2 synthesized with fruit, 3 yields a leaf.
Yes. It implies that if you combine the right small actions in the right way, you don't just get 3 tasks checked off your list, you get a profound transformation of state.
But this also implies a really massive risk. If this is chemistry, then missing an ingredient doesn't just give you a slightly lesser product, it gives you no product at all.
Or worse, it gives you a highly toxic product.
Toxic how?
Well, think about a startup team. You have a brilliant visionary who is fruit 1, and you have a relentless operator who is fruit 2. If you synthesize them, you might think you get a great company. But if you lack the third critical element, say deeply rooted trust, which is fruit 3, you don't get a pretty good company.
You get a disaster.
You get an absolute war. You get lawsuits and severed relationships. The absence of one key element in a synthesis reaction corrupts the entire chain. 3 weak fruits don't make a weak leaf. They make no leaf.
And 3 strong fruits don't just make a strong leaf, they create a synergistic boost. This leads us directly to the 4th quarter principle. I really want to spend some real time here because, as I mentioned earlier, when I read this section, I felt personally attacked.
That's a harsh truth for a lot of overachievers.
So the math puzzle posed in the text is simple. If a leaf is made of exactly 3 fruits, and we assume for the sake of the model they're equal, then each fruit is 25% of the leaf.
Right. 25 plus 25 plus 25.
Which equals 75.
Yes.
So where is the missing 25%? How does 75% equal a whole leaf?
This is the ghost in the machine of the mathematics framework. The missing 25% is what they call integrated utilization. It is the overlap. It is the dynamic relationship between the components.
Break that down for me with a real example.
Let's look at what the text calls the high performer failure case study. We all know someone like this. Let's just call him Mark.
Okay, poor Mark. Let's analyze him.
So Mark has incredible technical skills. That's fruit 1. Mark works incredibly hard, 80 hours a week. That's fruit 2. And Mark has cultivated a really impressive network of contacts. That's fruit 3.
Okay, so Mark has all 3 ingredients. He has the solid 75%.
Yes. But Mark keeps getting passed over for the big promotion. He's incredibly frustrated. He's sitting there saying, I'm doing everything right. What more did they possibly want from me?
And usually Mark's internal response is that he thinks he needs more of the base ingredients. So he goes back to school and gets another master's degree. Or he starts working 90 hours instead of 80. He tries to network even harder.
He just adds more bricks to the pile. He tries to solve a synthesis problem using standard addition logic. But the problem isn't the quality or quantity of his ingredients. The problem is the 4th quarter. It's the integration.
So what is he actually getting wrong?
Well, maybe Mark has the skills and the hard work, but he applies his hard work at the completely wrong time in the project cycle. That's poor rhythm.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe he has the amazing network and the skills, but he constantly uses his skills to arrogantly show off to his network rather than actually helping them solve their problems. That's poor context.
So the 4th quarter is essentially the timing and the context.
It is the kneading of the bread. You can have the best flour, the purest water, and the freshest yeast in the world. If you just dump them all into a bowl and stare at it, you just have a gross paste.
You need the time, the specific temperature and the physical motion to actually turn those raw materials into bread.
It's the dance. It's knowing exactly when to deploy the skill. It's knowing how the network actively relates to the hard work. This perfectly explains why you see people in your industry who genuinely seem to do less work than Mark, but they get so much further ahead.
Because they have mastered the fourth quarter.
Exactly. Their ingredients are synthesizing. Mark's ingredients are just piling up and collecting dust.
That is a deeply painful realization. Because it means that just grinding away is not enough. You actually have to be an artist of your own habits. You have to make them sing together in harmony.
Grinding is addition. True mastery is synthesis.
Okay, I think we understand the theory now. Let's stop talking in the abstract and actually build one of these things. We promised a masterclass, so let's do it. We're going to build a root squared chart for a very specific listener profile.
Let's use the mid-career pivot scenario.
Perfect. So imagine someone who is maybe 35 or 40. They've been in a very technical or maybe a middle management role for a decade. But they desperately want to move into creative leadership. They want to be a visionary director, not just a pair of hands executing tickets.
This is a classic and very difficult scenario because it requires a total identity overhaul. You cannot just work harder at your technical job to magically become a creative director. You have to fundamentally be different.
So step one is defining the root. But based on our earlier rules, we can't just write job title creative director in the center box right. That feels like a vanity metric.
It is a vanity metric. A root always needs to describe the lived experience. If you just write creative director, you might actually get the job title eventually, but you might absolutely hate the day-to-day life of it.
So we have to look deeper at the underlying desire. What does this person actually want?
They want autonomy. They want their unique ideas to be the primary currency of their career rather than their labor. They want genuine respect from their peers.
Okay, let's call the root integrated creative autonomy.
Integrated creative autonomy. That feels robust. It means I have the ideas, I have the systemic power to execute them, and I have the personal life structure to actually sustain that energy.
Step two, we build the branches. We need 4 massive pillars to hold this new root up.
Let's adapt the 4 archetypes we discussed earlier. Branch 1 is competence. You obviously need the actual high-level design or strategic chops.
Right, you can't fake the core skill. Branch 2 is connectivity.
Yes, you need a network that perceives you as a leader and a thinker, not just a reliable worker bee.
Branch 3 is identity or character.
This is the internal shift. You need to change your own internal monologue from I execute tasks assigned to me to I set the vision for others.
And branch 4 is vitality.
Because pivoting your entire career midstream is physically and mentally exhausting. You need immense energy reserves to pull this off without burning out.
Okay, so we have the 4 branches. Step 3 is the drill down. We need to zoom in on just one branch to see how it works. Let's focus on branch 1, which is competence. We need to define 3 leaves that make up competence. What are the functional states of a creative director?
Well, they clearly need technical fluency as one leaf, but let's pick a much more interesting one. A true creative director needs an informed perspective.
An informed perspective.
Yes, they need to be able to look at a complex problem and simultaneously see the historical context, the current market trends, and the future strategic possibilities all at once. That is a very specific state of mind.
So the leaf is informed perspective. Step 4, the fruits. How do we engineer this informed perspective? We need 3 atomic actions. And remember the rules. They must be actionable today, right now, in their current boring technical job.
Right, you can't wait for permission. So let's look at the necessary inputs and outputs. Fruit 1 is the input. Let's say, read one piece of deep industry history daily for 15 minutes.
Not the daily news.
Exactly, not news. News is noise. History is context.
Fruit 1 is history. What is fruit 2?
Fruit 2 is the social process. Ask one clarifying why question in every single meeting.
Oh, that is incredibly subtle.
It is, because normally the technical worker asks, when is this due, or how do you want this formatted? Instead, you force yourself to ask, why are we solving the user's problem this particular way? It instantly shifts your brain and how others perceive you into strategic mode.
And fruit 3?
Fruit 3 is the output. Write a 100-word synthesis of the day's primary insight before you log off.
Let me stop you there. Write 100 words. That seems almost too small to matter.
It is tiny. It takes maybe 5 minutes. But look at the chemistry of the synthesis here. If you read deep history every single day, You inevitably stop reacting to fleeting trends and you start seeing long-term patterns.
Right.
If you ask a why question every day, you fundamentally stop being a passive TaskRabbit and you start being an active critical thinker.
Now,
And if you write 100 synthesized words every day, you aggressively train your brain to articulate complex thoughts clearly.
so if I do those three things together,
If you synthesize those 3 actions for 90 days, you literally cannot help but develop an informed perspective. It is mathematically and biologically inevitable.
and the best part is none of those required any external permission. You do not need your manager to promote you to start asking why in a meeting.
Oh.
You don't need a fancy new title to read history.
Exactly. You start building the new visionary identity in the quiet cracks of your old job. The manuscript calls this running a shadow OS on your current hardware.
I absolutely love the idea of a shadow OS. It feels almost subversive.
It is. You are hacking your own environment.
But let's talk practically for a second. If I sit down this weekend and I fill out this entire massive chart, 4 branches, 12, leaves 36 fruits. I now have a giant menu of 36 daily actions. If I try to wake up on Monday and do all 36, I will literally quit by noon.
You will completely implode, and the manuscript explicitly warns against this. It calls it the accumulation trap. You are not supposed to eat all the fruit in the orchard at once.
So how do you actually use it day to day?
The core concept is daily selection. The chart is just your menu. Every morning you look at the chart and you ask yourself a simple question. What does the system need today?
Okay, so I don't do all of them.
No, maybe you just pick 3 fruits, just 3 out of 36. You might say, today I'm in focus mode. I have a massive presentation to build. So I'm going to do all 3 fruits from my informed perspective leaf to really prime my brain.
And on a different day.
On a Friday, you might say, I'm feeling completely burnt out. So today I'm going to do 2 fruits from my vitality branch, like taking a 30-minute walk and hydrating, and maybe 1 fruit from connectivity, like sending a thank you text to a colleague. That's maintenance mode.
So the structure of the chart is entirely static, but the daily execution is highly dynamic.
Yes, it brings profound intention to your day. Instead of just waking up and blindly working, you are consciously saying, today I am structurally reinforcing this one specific sector of my future self.
That is incredibly empowering. But it also leads us directly to the failure modes. Because even with a perfectly designed chart, people still fall off the wagon. The outline highlights 2 main failures, and the first one is called static chart syndrome.
This is a huge trap. This is when people treat their freshly drawn chart like a stone tablet of the 10 Commandments. They carve it in stone, they laminate it, and they never ever change it.
What's wrong with that? Isn't consistency the goal?
Consistency is good, but transformation is highly metabolic. It digests things. Here is the reality. If the system is actually working, the foods should eventually rot.
Rot. That sounds bad.
Metaphorically rot, meaning they become completely obsolete. If you practice your fruit of asking a why question in meetings for 60 days straight, eventually you don't need a checkbox to remind you to do it.
Right, it just becomes part of your personality.
Exactly. It moves from the conscious competence box in your brain into unconscious competence. It becomes automatic.
So checking it off your list is basically pointless at that stage.
Worse than pointless, it becomes purely performative. It's fake work. You're just patting yourself on the back to get a cheap dopamine hit for something that is already effortlessly easy for you. You aren't growing anymore.
So you have to kill the fruit.
You have to ruthlessly retire the fruit. The protocol for this is called the monthly distillation. At the end of every month, you review your chart. You ask what actions are now automatic. You literally erase those fruits. They sink into the background OS of your life. And you replace them with new, harder fruits.
Things that actually scare you again.
Yes. The quote from the text is, "The chart is alive. It is not wrong until it stops changing."
That's a really powerful metric for self-awareness. If your personal growth chart looks exactly the same in December as it did in January, you didn't actually transform this year. You just maintained.
Precisely. You stagnated under the illusion of progress.
Now let's dive into the second failure mode. This one is dense. It's arguably the most important and paradigm-shifting concept in the entire Metamatic system. It's called all iterator, no delineator.
It's brilliant.
Let's define the terminology first because it's highly specific. What exactly is an iterator and what is a delineator?
Okay, so the iterator is the content. It is you. It is the biological organism, the raw willpower, the skill, the physical effort. It is the internal engine that iterates or actively repeats the action.
And the delineator.
The delineator is the context. It is your external environment. It is the physical walls around you, the corporate rules, the schedule, the unwritten social constraints. It is the external container in which the iterator is forced to live.
So to use a nature analogy, the iterator is the seed and the delineator is the soil.
Perfect analogy, seed and soil. So the massive failure mode here is that 99% of modern self-help focuses entirely on the iterator.
Right, it's always try harder.
Be more disciplined, wake up at 4 a.m., want it more than the next guy. We are constantly trying to genetically modify the seed to somehow grow in solid concrete.
We completely ignore the delineator.
Entirely. We try to build this pristine, deep work leaf, which is an iterator function, while sitting in the middle of a loud open-plan office with a toxic boss who aggressively demands 5-minute Slack response times, which is a deeply hostile delineator.
And then when we inevitably fail to focus, we turn inward and blame the iterator. We say things like, I'm so weak, I have no discipline, I'm just lazy.
Right. But you aren't inherently weak. You are just a delicate plant trying to grow in radioactive soil. Absolutely no amount of personal willpower can sustainably overcome a structurally hostile environment.
So what's the fix for this? The manuscript calls it the inversion kick, which honestly sounds like a move from a martial arts movie.
It kind of is. It's an aggressive, tactical move designed to break a deadlock. Let's say you are that mid-career pivot person. You've been trying so hard to build your informed perspective leaf. But you are just drowning in chaotic, busy work at your current job. You are failing every week.
The inversion kick says what?
It says stop. Literally stop trying to improve yourself. Give up on the seed for a minute. You flip the entire chart upside down. You create a temporary phase B chart.
Okay, so what changes?
The root changes. The root is no longer integrated creative autonomy. The root is now simply optimal environment.
Oh, wow. So the ultimate goal shifts entirely from fix me to fix the room.
Yes. Your entire focus moves outward. Your fruits change completely.
Give me some examples of phase B fruits.
Old fruit was read a complex history article. That's content. The new phase B fruit is block my calendar from 8 to 9 a.m. every day as absolute do not disturb. That's context.
What else?
Another new fruit. Spend $200 to buy the best noise-canceling headphones on the market. Context. Another one. Schedule a highly uncomfortable conversation with my boss to specifically negotiate Slack response expectations. Context.
That is a radically different approach to productivity. You are spending all your precious energy manipulating the external physical and social world rather than trying to force your internal emotional world to comply.
You are finally tilling the soil. And the strict rule of the inversion kick is that you must stay in this phase B mode until the environment is absolutely no longer the primary bottleneck to your growth.
And then what?
Once the soil is rich and protected, then you flip the chart back to phase A. You go back to being the iterator and you plant the seed.
Can you give us a real-world example of this? The source document mentions a university student struggling with grades, but let's stick to a professional context to keep it consistent. Maybe a highly stressed middle manager.
Okay, let's take a stressed manager named David. David really wants to be a visionary leader. That's his phase A route.
Sounds familiar.
So David tries to start meditating every morning. That's a fruit. He tries to read dense strategy books on his lunch break. Another fruit. But he's getting absolutely crushed by 500 emails a day and constant team fires. So his meditation is rushed, and he can't focus on his books. He's failing, and he feels incredibly guilty about it.
So David executes the inversion kick.
Yes. He pauses the phase A chart. He actively stops trying to read the strategy books. He stops forcing himself to meditate.
He forgives himself for the iterator failure.
Exactly. His completely new phase B fruits are entirely environmental. Fruit 1, hire a part-time virtual assistant just to pre-filter his inbox. Fruit 2, establish a strict no internal meetings on Fridays policy for his entire team. Fruit 3, physically move his desk from the busy hallway out to a quiet, forgotten corner of the office.
So he just spends 6 weeks doing nothing but building a fortress.
He builds the fortress, and once the fortress is secure, he is no longer constantly interrupted. Then and only then does he go back to his phase A chart. He starts reading strategy books again.
And suddenly the books actually stick.
Because he finally has the cognitive space to digest them. The delineator is supporting the iterator.
That right there is the missing link for so many smart-driven people. We just keep trying to run a marathon in a dark room full of invisible tripwires.
Yeah.
We need to stop trying to run faster and just turn on the lights and cut the wires first.
True mastery in the metamatics framework is the seamless integration of both. You need to be an elite runner, which is iterator, and you must become a master architect of the track itself, which is the delineator. If you only ever focus on one, you will inevitably hit a hard ceiling.
Let's move to the deep philosophy section to close this out because things get pretty existential toward the end of the manuscript. There's a concept called the 1/over principle. It's written mathematically as 1/x. This is a little hard to visualize on an audio medium, so please walk us through it very slowly. It's basically about fractions, right?
It's entirely about fractions, and specifically it's about the power of the denominator. In basic mathematics, the denominator heavily dominates the fraction. It sets the fundamental terms of the reality. So the 1/over principle asks a profound question. Where is the position of 1 in your life? In this formula, the number 1 represents you, the individual, the ego.
The I.
Yes, the I. Now let's apply this to a discipline, say a daily walking practice. There are 2 distinct ways you can structurally relate to the discipline of walking.
Okay, what's option A?
Option A is 1/over walking. The 1 is the numerator. Walking is the denominator. Wait, no, sorry, let me correct that. Option A is you are the numerator. You are on top, 1/over walking.
So I am greater than the walk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are the master. Walking is the servant. You walk when it conveniently serves you. You walk when the sun is shining. You walk when you inherently feel like it.
Which honestly sounds like a perfectly healthy, balanced approach to most people.
It is healthy, but it is the amateur position. The discipline bends to your ego.
Okay, so what is option B?
Option B flips the fraction entirely, walking over 1. Now, walking is the numerator on top. Walking is the absolute principle. And you, the number 1, are the denominator. You are on the bottom. You actively serve the walk. It doesn't matter if you are exhausted. It doesn't matter if it's pouring rain outside. It doesn't matter if you are deeply sad. The walk simply happens. You completely submit your ego to the discipline. This is the professional position.
It sounds incredibly intense, submission. It almost sounds like you're losing your personal freedom.
That is the ultimate paradox of the entire system. It initially looks like you are losing your freedom, but structurally, it is actually the only way to gain true power.
How so?
Think about an elite Olympic athlete. Do they only go to the track and train when they feel super motivated? Of course not. Their training schedule is the numerator, training over 1. They are the denominator. They contort their entire life, their diet, their sleep, their social life to fit the absolute demands of the training.
Right, the training dictates reality.
And because they fully submit to that rigid structure, they ultimately achieve a level of physical freedom and capability that the amateur who only trains when they feel like it will literally never touch.
So the deep dive insight here is that to truly master a fruit, to truly embed it so deeply into your root square that it changes, you eventually have to flip the fraction. You have to willingly move yourself to the bottom as the denominator.
You have to make a hard decision. Am I doing this habit or is this habit doing me? Until the habit runs you automatically, it's not really a leaf, it's just a casual hobby.
That perfectly connects back to the spiral concept, the spiral of becoming. Because a question naturally arises. What happens when you actually succeed? Let's go back to David, our stress manager. Let's say he does all of this. He flips the fraction, he does the inversion kick, he synthesizes his fruits, he officially achieves his root. He's now the integrated visionary leader. Does he just win? Is the game finally over?
No, the game is never over. That is both the terror and the immense beauty of mathematics.
So what happens?
The spiral dictates that once a root is fully established, once it is completely solid and unquestionable, it immediately shrinks down in perspective. That massive root suddenly becomes just one single branch of a brand new, much larger chart.
Oh, wow, it's fractal.
It is entirely fractal. David's visionary leadership, which consumed his whole world for 2 years now, simply becomes the baseline competence branch of his next evolution. Maybe his new chart's root is industry titan or global changemaker.
The ceiling of your current level literally becomes the floor of your next level.
Exactly. The structure repeats infinitely at every scale.
Meaning, there is truly no state of done, there is only next.
Correct. You are always building.
And finally, let's talk about the ultimate end goal of the specific piece of paper. We talked at the beginning about how the physical chart is messy, it's handwritten, it's alive. But the source material explicitly says the ultimate goal of drawing the root square chart is to throw it away.
Yes. The concept is called map to territory.
Map to territory.
The chart you draw is just a scaffold. It is a temporary crutch. You use it to hold your behavior up while you slowly build the internal neurological muscle. But the ultimate goal is what they call comprehensive comprehension.
Which means what exactly?
It means the external structure has completely dissolved into internal function. You no longer need to check a little box on a piece of graph paper that says ask a why question, because you fundamentally are a critical thinker. It's in your bones.
Right. It's just who you are now.
When the map you drew finally matches the territory of your soul perfectly, you burn the map. You just live freely in the territory.
Structure dissolves into function. That is genuinely beautiful.
It is the only way to truly fly.
This has been an absolutely massive download of information. I mean, we've covered anatomy, we've covered chemistry, math, deep philosophy, fractions. Let's try to crystallize this for the listener who is maybe staring at a blank piece of paper right now, feeling a little overwhelmed. What are the absolute key takeaways they need to remember?
Okay, if you remember nothing else, remember these 4 things. Number 1, build from the edges. Do not stare blankly at the root. Obsess over the fruits. Find those tiny atoms that are irreducible, actionable, and observable, and start there.
Number 2.
Number 2, synthesis is not addition. A plus in a circle is not a regular plus. Don't just stubbornly do more work. Look for the dynamic relationships between the small things you do. Look for the 4th quarter. Find the rhythm and context that makes your habits actually sing together.
Number 3.
Number 3, respect the delineator. If you are constantly failing, don't just blindly blame your internal willpower. Look closely at your external soil. Execute the inversion kick and fix your environment if you need to.
And number 4.
Number 4, flip the fraction. Decide what matters enough to you to put it in the numerator. Ask yourself, what are you actually willing to serve?
And stop trying to build the roof before you've even laid the foundation.
Please, it never ever works.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought, something to just haunt you a little bit as you go about the rest of your day. You're currently running a chart right now in this exact moment. You might not have consciously drawn it, you might not have chosen it, but your life is an active system.
It's always running.
Your daily micro-actions, the specific way you scroll your phone in bed, the exact way you snap at your partner when you're stressed, the processed food you mindlessly eat, those are your fruits. You are eating them every single day.
And they are synthesizing.
Yes, those fruits are actively synthesizing into leaves, states of anxious distraction or chronic fatigue or defensiveness, and those leaves are silently building huge, immovable branches. So look closely at your habits today and ask yourself the truly terrifying question. What root am I unknowingly constructing?
Because the architecture is happening right now, whether you are the active architect or not.
That is the ultimate question. Stop adding. Start synthesizing. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
See you next time.